In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached, and by the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached, and by the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. The very essence of space, yet it can be experienced as the wisdom of our own awareness. Homage to the mother of the Buddhas of past, present, and future. In the language of India, Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hridaya. In the language of Tibet, Chomden Dhamma Shira Giparo Tu Jimbe Ningpo. In English, the Heart Sutra. In one volume, homage to the Bhagavati Prajna Paramita. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of monks and a great gathering of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that examines the Dharmas called profound illumination. At that same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should those noble men and women learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge? Thus he spoke, and noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words: Shariputra, those noble men and women who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is no other than form, and form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no concept, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no dharmas. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of thought and no quality of mind consciousness. There is no ignorance and no wearing out of ignorance, and so on until no old age and death, nor their wearing out. In the same way, there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment for the bodhisattvas, they abide by means of transcendent knowledge, and since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, true, and complete enlightenment by means of transcendent knowledge. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering, should be known as truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of transcendent knowledge is proclaimed. Jayata Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhisattva. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound transcendent knowledge. The Blessed One rose from that samadhi and praised the noble bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, well done, noble son, it is so, it is just so. Profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and the noble Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering and the world with its gods, men, asuras, and gandharvas rejoice and praise the words of the Blessed One. Namo, homage to the Lama. Namo, homage to the Lama, homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha, homage to the Great Mother, Prajna Paramita. From paying homage to these, may these words of mine come true. Just as long ago the king of the gods, Indra, from contemplating on the profound meaning of the Prajna Paramita, the Great Mother, and reciting its words, was able to avert the demonic forces and other negative influences, so in the very same way, from my own contemplation on the profound meaning of the Prajna Paramita, the Great Mother, and recitation of its words, by the power of the truth of the Lama and the three jewels, may all obstacles to the teachings, listening, hearing, contemplation, and meditation on the Dharma be averted. May they be annihilated. May they be pacified. May they be completely pacified. Whatever is interdependent arising from connection is without cessation and without birth, without end and without permanence, without coming and without going, without division and without unity of meaning. All conditions fully released, teaching released, I bow to the sacred words of the perfect Buddha. May there be good fortune, pacifying the 80,000 types of obstructors, removing harmful, unfavorable circumstances, accomplishing and perfecting those that are favorable. By such auspiciousness, may happiness and excellence be here right now. Inti or bouquet? Okay. I prostrate to the Bhagavan Manjushri. May your mind is completely pure and luminous, like the sun free from the two clouds of the two obscurations. You hold the text at your heart, since you see all the variety of objects just as they are. You love like your only child all the multitude of beings who are trapped by the darkness of ignorance and the prison of samsara and afflicted by suffering. Your speech, possessing the 60 kinds of melodies, roars mightily like a dragon. Thus you awaken from the sleep of the kleshas, liberate from the chains of karma, and dispel the darkness of ignorance. You hold aloft a sword, since you cut all the sprouts of suffering. You are primordially pure and have completed the 10 bhumis. You have perfected all the qualities. The kaya of the eldest son of the victorious one is adorned with the 112 ornaments. You dispel the darkness of my mind. I pay homage to Manjushri. By the rays of your kind supreme knowledge, dispel the dark ignorance of my mind, that I might understand the teachings and the commentaries as in the canon. I beseech you to grant the luminosity of confident wisdom. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, and the sun and moon. As a Buddha field I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields. To the lamas who possess the 3 kayas, I offer the outer, inner, and secret offerings. With my body, wealth, and all that is visible, please grant me the supreme realization, enlightenment. Om Guru Deva Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying, for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma, of the true vehicles and their combination, according to the dispositions and likewise the mental capacities of sentient beings.
Medigo Renjan Kujo Umi Joye Bodo Sonje Gunje Muni Jogo Mosong Zibi Lamye Kujo No Jojo Donge Jidano Diri Lomona Jogo Sodo Good morning. Good morning. 대단한 저 트레이닝 나가주 나야티 되네 바도 레이스.
So today, the topic of the teachings is Bardo, or the intermediate states. Oh, you need someone to teach you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you. And I will need one also.
Thank you.
You have it first.
That in the human being, 다 로바 멀라 가타까니 세나리 가리용구요리 라위나 제비까니 다 되네 지 나와 다 개바타 되네 고치야라서 버튼이 지 용구요리스.
So being born, specifically being born as human beings, we have the particular types of suffering that are specific to the human realm, of which there are many, but they can kind of be subsumed into the basic sufferings of suffering of birth, the suffering of illness, the difficulty of old age and suffering of old age, and then the suffering of death.
That in the Taco, Jikali Cheshode Kachadiosana, much of Hivik make up the Chadiores.
And of these, the most difficult is the death process.
In a young that Tilla to Shana Jegoya, simply Jegoya, Yomari, Gokas, nature, Rangi, Teleyanko, Car, Toyada. Dio Marilla, Tiganaji came to Telawodanga, Nagri Zambiki, Centriaton, Tine, Higri Zambiki, Centriaton, Tine, Goya Mari, Koran Hiroa.
And yet, at the same time, it isn't something that we want to be too afraid of or have too much worry or anxiety about, because it's also just a natural process. And so to be overly fearful, or to be really fearful about, I'm going to get sick and it's going to be really difficult, or I'm going to die and it's going to be really difficult, this doesn't do anything to help the process. So we don't have to be afraid.
So Trisong, also Donatine, Irkala Tawa Liberis, Tawa Yoris, the Tawa Liberty, that's our book in the Doji Sandinaco, Ran Galichero, Motobeke, Kotawa Mayunke, Takiyom, Kotanjiro, Kosama, Tawa Living, what is Tongo, the Rangiris.
So, like for instance, if we use this example, like in Tucson in the summer, it's really hot. So if we, knowing that summer is coming and it's going to get really hot, if we're like, oh, it's going to get really hot, this is terrible, it can't get so hot, then there's no benefit in that because it's still going to get hot. We're not going to do anything to change the process, and we're just going to make it more difficult for ourselves to be resisting it and worried about it because it's just nature. It's going to get hot in the summer in Tucson.
어떻게 다 어떻게 연구하고 되게 딱 아주 추념의 집안이나 되네 다조 가서는 아주 situation 이제 간디지 준비해놔야 그 샘게 때문에 지 좋아하는 거지 그와 말하와 그와 되지 고기요 살이다 밴도 차샤비나 되지 this 나기요나 this 가와는 거지 나바틀은 사람이 가서 나나 팽기요래 카레 팽거스나 아주 개와도야 팽기요래 인지제야 팽기요래 오다 근데제 그 포지티브 소 랜이라와 다 네게티브 팽이로 팽이 다 공예요 말이 되네야 된다고게 그걸로 제가 나에게 지ken디 나나다 그 제가 나한테 많이 봐 깔래 먹고 열어와 번jo thola kangi yore tene leke thola kangi yore political kangi yore
Kungtati Haljor Dom?
tene lekha yoro kahi lekha ya pura beri kahi lekha ya yo parwa
Sejong.
tene te political kangi yore inata tende kangi tinu bikabla sen ke dene rwa ji tene ko towa ji da ji khase gore worry ta tene konto ke want mandoba ji gogi ores
So in particular as Dharma practitioners, we have to develop kind of the attitude that is really willing and kind of eager to take on any situation, whatever it is that comes our way, to like really to kind of joyfully take on the challenge, if you will. So to have an attitude of acceptance and curiosity and joy, you know, in whatever it is that we're confronting, sort of taking the benefit that can be taken from that situation. So you know, if we're sick, for instance, then really being okay with that and even welcoming it, thinking, okay, I'm going to take what's beneficial, what can be you know, a positive in this situation. So for instance, it is something that can inspire me to practice virtue. It can inspire me to generate compassion. So we take the positive and accept the negative, like the pain that comes with it, because we have no choice. But to have that positive outlook is really important as Dharma practitioners, so that we can confront whatever it is that comes our way and bring it onto the path of practice. So there are so many difficulties, you know, in life, even beyond the basics of birth, old age, sickness, and death. You know, we encounter financial hardships at our workplace, you know, the changing political climate and difficulty and hardship on that level. And so whatever it is, whatever the hardship, you know, to worry and to resist it is not going to bring us any benefit. But if we can really sort of have kind of a heroic attitude that's like, bring it on, you know, whatever it is, to have kind of a joyful, accepting mind that is willing to use this situation and you know, or to accept the challenge in a way that is going to deepen our practice and benefit our practice without losing ourselves to the emotions of worry and anxiety or anger or whatever afflictions that are stimulated by the situation.
어디인데 내가 나이 다가서 다니 공투가 나이에 ngazo hia la naya la simte gogu mare de yimbe ne yang thade chi gogu res.
However, so that being said, we also, as Drupon Rinpoche says, he mentioned last night, we want to be prepared. So we also don't want to be completely caught off guard, but that we're really prepared to confront the suffering of illness, to confront the suffering of death, old age and death.
Tinita, Jiti Kichoti Karilavina, Lady Wamasu Sonam, Geva Dog Huna, could give it to you the Devari, that Lovayo Marwa. Tinito Masana, G. Ganye Chungdam Majung, De Ta could lend it in Matongas Doba Yutamayu, choice Yomarwa. Angana Gimena, Higmens Atendiki, or Doba Yomaya. Yimina could lay it on, it depends. What Yamia Kandiki, what Rally user is.
So everything is karma. You know, whatever seed that is planted is going to yield the corresponding outcome. So when we plant wholesome seeds, then the fruit, the result will be favorable, well-being and happiness. And this is infallible. So karma is infallible in the way that it functions. So whether or not hardships come our way is entirely dependent upon the karmic seeds that we've planted. So we really have no choice. You know, we can't, things are not going to turn out the way that we want them to just because we want them to turn out that way. There has to be the karmic cause that supports the outcome. So it depends on our karma. You know, whether we suffer, you know, whether situations that are social situations of hardship or suffering are going to, whether we're going to confront those. And then likewise, how we handle those situations really depends on our practice, our level and ability to practice with them.
다 디게 공가 좀 로마송나 가서 다 데리고 가레티다 마티데 다 가서 다 데리다 아이 미세하게 벨레 소남 다 이치 대발라서 와데 같이 하더스나 그네다 가서 데려와 근데 모터라고 있나
모터
the steering wheel
So when it comes to like our karmic lot, you know, and how things ripen and how we also skillfully respond to those ripenings or not skillfully respond to those ripenings, it kind of comes down to like 4 basic qualities: karma, merit, faith or trust, we could say, or confidence, and faith. So that's like the steering wheel of a car. It's like the steering wheel.
어디 콜람가라 대인들이 당가서디 단기 공투가 나기에 아주 prepare 고글에 라비아테라와다 다들 지야디 다 내가 갈 도기랑 아주 다들 지기 거래스 좋아.
So
we 치도를 내가 도비하게 내가 타토 블로그로 내가 타토 니게 내가 도비하게 때 지기 거래스.
So for this reason, so we have to be prepared to direct things on the path of virtue as they come our way, to be able to steer things in the direction of virtue or the wholesome. And that preparation serves both as creating the conditions for favorable temporary outcomes and long-term outcomes, the ultimate kind of both like temporary and ultimate happiness.
That the that the 가르치는 거 좋게 줄라 되네 딱 맨날 단다 대발라 버리려와 대바들라 되네 대바들라 되네 제가 대바를 뭐요래 다 얘가 양도 다 방법들라 아주 대바디 가르치고 다 주마로 주메 대바로 제제되네 제네 그 대바들라 지금 확실히 요구하라고 지금 들어와
So first of all, when it comes to faith, so for the faith that arises in the mind stream, there are actually many different qualities of faith or types of faith. But in order to have this quality, faith in general, it requires first encouraging a faith that is a little bit fabricated. It's actually something that is kind of actively encouraged, that we maybe have to contrive it a little bit in the beginning, because it is through that then that what we're doing essentially is we're creating an imprint, we're creating a tendency, and then when that tendency is well established, then it becomes natural, it becomes uncontrived.
어차피 양아서 대바지도 같이 거지는지 sometimes could become this Mr. Chas이라고 해서 대바지지 대바샤서 당가히 라마리는 건데 대바샤서 부다샤고 이내야 대바라마 샤고나리 부다라 샤고나리 teleci karşı koci pagi yudici timbaroji samutana dedi mares. Yudici timbaroji
So sometimes people make a mistake with faith. Sometimes faith can be kind of a mistake, and that usually has to do with a misunderstanding of the purpose and of faith and the real meaning of the object of faith. Oh, is it me? Oh, I thought because last night I thought it was someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just rubbing.
Sorry about that.
The little phone thing fell off.
The phone thing?
Yeah, it was a little. That's okay. We'll find it later.
I think this will be good.
Yeah.
So often the object of faith for many people the thought is that this is the Lama, but really the object of our faith first and foremost should be the Buddha. But in any case, whether it is the Lama or the Buddha, we have to understand that our faith is not for the object. It is not to please or the object of our faith. It's not like the object of our faith needs our faith.
It can be called Devada Yore, Yimina, so much Taba, Sayaji Yobina, Taba Hasha Yobina, Ranki Jula, Dewa, confident, Libiores.
So really what the faith should be doing is actually nurturing us from our own side in such a way that as this faith arises in our mind, it gives us a sense of well-being and joy and confidence. It increases our sense of confidence and and so then when that faith is really confident and deep, then it really is easy to have as a reliance, especially as we confront difficulties or hardships, that immediately what comes to mind is what supports our faith.
Tiga naida tanda te yungdo I don't know this ya boina mena. Ina ngaso de jik teng yor kecha lo kadulam na. Pena Jesus lo lagu yorwa. Kecha jik kari problem ina ya boina. China Jesus kachin lagu yorwa. Mete ya boyo na kanyeti na jik kak tongdo wa. Te lagu yorma ne. Ketang lagu yor. Te kachin lagu yor.
It's like Jesus will save you, kind of, or what?
No. So the kind of always you remember, right? So we something happened. Jesus, right?
I see. He's talking about when we swear.
Oh, right.
When we say Jesus.
So that's kind of actually, I think not bad, but sometimes angry at Jesus, then maybe not good. But
what he's referring to, let me explain a little is that because he was just saying that, if something, for instance, dangerous or difficult happens, then what should happen is that immediately what comes to our mind is our object of faith. So he's using the example of how it's kind of interesting that in the West, often as a reflexive response, like if something dangerous happens and people go, Jesus, that actually this is maybe not such a bad thing, as long as it's not, if it's with anger, of course it's not positive, but this sort of reflexive, bringing to mind like an object of faith kind of response is actually a positive thing.
Thank you. Then there Karsana Benata Terawa. Not so Bena Hili Nekam Minata, Konagi Yore, Lu functioning your mare. In a tea gabla, Tayam Kapora. It has a Washa Chimpo Chitana. Objects in a Kali Kasi Tivina could be confident Ojila. Then Sanji Tangdo. The tent of in a Kotagi do not let it tell
So this is really important to understand the need to build a very strong habit or tendency because it does become more difficult as we get older, and through the death process, it does become increasingly difficult to remember the Dharma, to remember the Buddha, to remember our practice. So that's why we have to have such a deep imprint or tendency, a karmic imprint for that, because as the body stops functioning gradually over time, there is more likelihood to kind of disconnect from and forget. So we want our karmic imprint to be so deep that there's no way we're going to forget. So that we're going to remember the Buddha, especially, when in times of real difficulty and hardship.
That's all Karsanang of Tereha. That Pacha, Chunyamanche, Shukchir Tango is. I think the most important part is Karisana. Also, maybe of details, the dissolution of Togura. Inayada, not Dudishuvina. In Ta Tabo, Maso Juma, support the go all the Yuga Gavla. Konasano Yori. Inayam. Kale, not so deep, Subone, then functioning, do maybe Kabla, Kale, never Chagrava. Tea Gabla depending in the Karsana. That should Yaman Chinegi ina, then that thing in the Dama, Tebada, Tigam, Neto. Karsana could not rely on the body, let it Chabahita Yomanapo. Yina not to Yamna Mina. Teneta ko body tela ko function me wa chagro thi ka la tene je churwan da mena ta kanyen da mena da kanyen extra kanyen wa nga chu ta de kin ji ten di kin thong zu na cha chi chagna la so kanyen yori Tigala, Carsananga, Jumatu, town because Suwaki Yorwa. The next Dakaji, very suffering, confusion, Charlotte Mesora.
So what we, by creating very strong karmic imprints or really strong tendencies for the Dharma, the time to do this is now, or when we are healthy, when everything is functioning properly, when we have the capacity to practice. Because when those really challenging moments happen, for instance, we're going to get into more detail and talking about the different stages of dissolution at the time of death. There's like the breakdown of the body, the outer dissolution and of the elements, and the kind of gradual breakdown of these gross elements that comprise the physical body. And there's real pain and suffering that accompanies that. But if we, right now, while everything is functioning and we're not really in the throes of confronting like those basic sufferings of the human realm, birth, old age, sickness, and death, and, mostly it's like kind of extracurricular suffering of, all kinds of different things that our response is usually caught up in attachment and aversion to, in our responses to these. It's like, the minds of attachment and aversion. But if we instead use our lifetime to really develop qualities of meditative absorption, the faith and devotion, and then while we're functioning, we're healthy, then when there's the breakdown of the body, we sort of already know, and we have another source of reliance. So we know we can't rely on the physical body. And so then it's easier to slip into, the mind state of meditative absorption, of faith and devotion, because we've directed our mind so with such stability to go into these states rather than being kind of caught up in the physical. And so but on the other hand, if we don't do that, if we don't cultivate while we can states of meditative absorption and the beautiful qualities of heart and mind, then we're not familiar with them at the time of death. So what happens is that there's the suffering, the very intense suffering of the breakdown of the body, and then there's also the extra suffering of the attachment and aversion on a mental level, all of the other kind of sufferings that we haven't really, because we haven't trained our mind to do otherwise. And so then it becomes much more difficult.
The physically dissolution experience extra
Okay. So there's like the physical suffering of the breakdown of the body, and then on top of that there's the extra suffering, of all of the various attachment and aversions of the mind at that time.
The last week, I think maybe 2 weeks, maybe already 2 weeks, right? So this agente Toyoris, Koran mission practitioner, then Koran set down Kadundoya, Tuzu, Pagila, and China ground. So Sama, Tuzu Kadia, Gado, Finichafan, Dioris.
So, for instance, this is to show you what it's like for a practitioner to die. So his uncle died maybe 2 weeks ago. He was very old. He was in his 90s, right? And he was really, really an incredible practitioner. And so he actually kind of like planned everything out before he died, kind of knowing, when was the best time astrologically, like when the charnel ground was open, things like this. He sort of like knew, kind of considered prior to his death all of the different factors, and then chose to die in at the best time.
So the best example, Karlana, Tene ta kamba de ko physical choyo maris kamba ya mo ko so de dos, right? So de dos, yeah. Stand up, right? Sit.
Oh yeah. So
Think la color was na ta could not rely on the physical body, right? The kamba ke ma ta pe dam shows, type love your right.
So I'm not sure I'm getting this completely, but I know he'll correct me if I don't. But the main thing is it sounds like his legs weren't working any longer.
No, he's not relying on his body. His body doesn't matter, he said. I want to standing straight up.
Sit up. Sit
up.
Straight up.
I want. But if your leg is not working, just tied up.
Just tied
up. Leg is not a big deal, So because the meditation doesn't matter, physical is probably no longer functioning, So then he just kind of sit straight up, and they tell him. I think I didn't tie up the leg, but just
they didn't tie up the leg.
I'm not sure, but first he told, okay, I want to stand,
sit up,
and leg is not working, just drop,
Just tie their legs with a rope. The legs don't matter. The main thing is that he was saying he needed to be able to sit up in meditation.
Physical lula, unity, dissolution, unity, containment,
So in that way, when someone has really strong confidence in their practice and real faith, then, no matter what is happening at the time of death, no matter how much physical pain or, how the body is responding physically, the main, that one isn't really affected so much by this, the mind, that they're really able to direct their mind as they choose.
In order to that get Jesus collega carina kanya take galako teba yi ji sanje de yu wanda oji ta gentleman de chungyo sarwa.
So, that being the case, then we want to really develop a habit, especially whenever something happens and we're confronted by difficulty or something dangerous, just like that reflex of saying Jesus, we want to have a reflex, it's like Buddha, that immediately the Buddha comes to our mind and that's where we're directing our focus.
That is, the powerful Karsina Ketoni got it and you can deny someone of Amina. Nyong Bala powerful yore in a Gevala than a Tabata Yichila powerful yores. The pedo Chashavinatine, Chekani Chi Kabla, Teni Tabata Yichi Yubi Kabla, Tene Koran Beda Lama Tengi Unare, Kandiji Tengi Unatini. Koji tiki sorwa tiki jigli aumbe kabla tene jitagi kanyet kan yungu yo mares bente gebe chorwa tene nga so kontro jisa devi na ta kontro sana kontro negative power ke tene mistake chigile tene kono ha saya ke ko ji kharse ko the future ke consequence to sama tengi marwa oda tena yi yores.
So it's powerful because, of course, equally, there's kind of two powers at play, the power of virtue and the power of negativity, because the power of afflictive emotions are very powerful, and they, and overwhelming, and likewise, faith and confidence, or spiritual confidence and devotion are very powerful. So it's sort of like one is going to win over the other in a difficult situation. So in a difficult situation, if you remember your spiritual teacher, if you have, your source of faith and reliance there, then even though there is, the really difficult situation or maybe very painful in whatever way, that the power of your mind is going to kind of win out on that in that difficult situation, so that you're not going to feel as much the pain and the suffering of that difficult condition. But on the other hand, if your response is one of anger or fear or negative emotion that wins over the positive, or wins overwhelms or wins over the positive responsive or positive, beautiful mind states, then it's going to be kind of the opposite. And that's when we make mistakes, because we're so overwhelmed by the mind of affliction that we're not really thinking about the future. We're not thinking about the outcome. We're just completely in the throes of the affliction.
Mada tiga na yike ngaja jigo mari semte yorba, semte worry tizo kanga, shongche mo yuna tene, go functioning lo chagi yo mari is future.
So, and it's not just like anger or, other kind of the typical afflictions, but like, worryings and anxiety, they really do a number on us to the point where sometimes we can't even really function.
Tineda, the examples, the story, jigyoris, nato tebas, kariosana, tanga zulungbala, lama jigyore, lama tina, ngawa jensen labgare. Tene kong.
Lama Gyatsen?
Ngawa jensen.
Ngawa Gyatsen.
Gyatsen. Tene, ta korang, ta kochar rubile shongang, ta lama ibi jumsen le tene, ko dungu yorwa. Mama ko dungu, ina ta tinga nga, torture, karchigos, na jamu ke tene, ka lakwa ni padam, takbe tene, porjo lama ni somra uchi, sojo ni somra uchi, tene dungu yores, pageg.
Ti chiki aku marave.
Tanga su telabiyamado, sama miji di lama yokumida. O tene tene, ina yang poda kadu thak china tene, tapachi logu yorwa. Ya tene ta yeli tidu nga yori tene, nga zonyang bo tene chuk tidu ta, ko hansan famous pede, ta all the chair de konso kamini bati hansan yoro ko met karina ko ji magic ko ta kari yidam gungu yona, songa gungu yona, kari gungu yona stene, labu yorwa. Ina jere tene nga zo kechati yorwa, chorang karchi yu labu yorwa. Tene nga hansan ka sojya dos best, hansan ya pede. Ji kanda ta sukma tawa tene sojya dos tabe damgu yorwa, chasama te kalu yorwa. Ina tiga la tene lamsan kora pe korang tsewe lama te takor mochi dowa. Tene takor mochi tenwa, takor mochi subata te takor korang pe kong lei nang tene duila takor mochi peyo. Chik tache do kong tene peyo tsulgi dos. Tene soba te gara te lode te logo te gara tapachi logo yasa de ngara hako ma song labdo. But tene ke ko teba se ya tene kwa yore is.
So there's a story of someone in Tibet who was also a family member and a really kind of well-known lama in Tibet. His name was Ngawang Gyatsen. And he was tortured during the Cultural Revolution. And in fact, there was like a method of torture that they would do to actually sever people's hands. So they would and the back side, they would tie their hands up, and then they would have people pulling the rope from either side. They would have like 3 people on one side and 3 people on another side, and they would pull in such a way that eventually the rope would like cut through the person's hands and cut off their hands. And so,
but this rope is normal heavy duty, never break.
And it's a really, really heavy duty type of rope that generally can never break. And so he was, and so there was this really kind of, everyone became very famously known what had happened because the people pulling on the brake, all of a sudden the rope would break, and it kept happening, and so they didn't know every time, and so they couldn't cut off his hands, and so then later on, and Drupon Rinpoche was actually there, people would ask him, like, what happened, like, what were you doing, what were you practicing, at that time to make that happen? Were you practicing like the Yidam deity? What was it? And he said,
or
some Raffle deity. And so he would say that, it was so painful. It would just get to the point where, because like all of the blood the circulation was like completely cut off. And it would get to the point where it was just unbearable. And then in that mind, he would remember his guru, who was Drupon Rinpoche, who, like an emanation of Gampopa. And he would, and then right when he would just have Drupon Rinpoche in his mind, and then he would actually appear, Drupon Rinpoche would appear to him, like in his robes and everything, he would see it very clearly. And then in that moment, there would be a sense of like freedom and release. He would feel really at peace and at ease. And that was when the rope would break. So this was, this just goes to show the power of faith and devotion, really deep and sincere faith and devotion. So we have to understand that faith and devotion is not like something we should have, it's something that benefits us. Like it's something that really the point of faith is to benefit one's own mind stream. So also in his own case, so he had an instance where he was actually captured by the Chinese, and he was and at first he was really scared, he didn't know, like, maybe they're gonna kill me, maybe, he didn't know what the outcome of that situation was gonna be. So at first he was afraid, and then he remembered, he thought of Achi, and he just thought, whatever happens, happens. And there was this feeling of placing his mind, with reliance, on the object of faith, and then it's sort of like, whatever happens, it's okay. And so he didn't have any fear. So that being said, what we really should sort of take away from this is the importance of building our karmic imprint, our tendency of, how to direct the mind, especially in difficult circumstances or frightening situations. So for the teachings, we have this prayer, this Bardo prayer by Natso Silerangro, which is, it goes through the different stages of the Bardo. And then also, Drupon Rinpoche will be teaching some from the Bardo as it is explained in the context of the 6 yogas of Naropa.
가서는 아주 추월로이나 토바스고도 하고고래 이 희글라는 아주 bomba지들이 아주 냠내지고와 뒤는 통 토바 개체보레스 토바지야.
So as you know, very important in our practice of Dharma. There are the three kind of necessary activities of hearing or listening, study. Sometimes we say in Tibetan it's tuba, which literally means hearing. But sometimes we translate this as study because it kind of has both the connotation of both reading but also receiving oral teachings. And then contemplating, and meditation. So these are all, the most important really is meditation, but you can't have that without the foundation of hearing or without the studies. So they're all really necessary activities, in the context of practicing Dharma.
아주 가리오레 수비나 되네. 바도도 멜람도 워세도 포와 아주 참아라다 가서는 타겟 가리오스나 아주 힘이 갑라다 토르토리아게 되네. 이기다 남아지레스.
So, in the 6 yogas of Naropa, in particular the yogas of Bardo, dream yoga, clear light, and poa, the target of all of those is the death process. So they're all practices or pith instructions that are meant to assist us at the time of death.
다 담보에 가리고서 나가서 제타 내가 제때 가르쳐야 그래서나 되네. 다른 가르쳐서 오래도 되시겠어요. 배나 가자마자 왕 휴비가 왕 다왕 시와람나리 되네. 토끼 왕람나리 뒤갑라 가자마자 왕 간나요리 휴비나 되네. 상제게 토다 예매와 되네. 가서 와비 왕나 와비게 되니 무슨 토 가져오게 되니 직샘 텔레 예매와 되니지 요래 이내양 직과직장을 봐서는 직과직장 말이 뒤는 아까서는 가져주라 뭐지 요 obscuration 와 뒤는 뭐가 돼야 되니 직가서 그래 장이 좁대와도 되니 말이 뒤내양 내가 그때는 용바지 요래 다디 용바데 가리라면 호반 참여 주도 차리다 뭐좀 집아 됐대요 아주기 상제기다 퀄리티도 쳐서 요비네요 만호야 수제되어요 슬라비는 아주 용무게 되어요 다 용무바디 수리 리스크 카드 리지네데 람나리 리소스 카드잖아 뭐 당지 세다 세기도 어떻게 차디어레스 that dependent 나 요비나 되네 타바 도야 가고래요 나 세야다디 마이나 되네 어디 인도 다 담보디 가지고 나 세야 다지 나 세야디 다지요 코란이데 combination으로 나다 ignorance 말해봐 티니고 코란이 있고 나 세야 있고 말해봐 때는 나 세야와 나 세야지 다든지마 어디 셀레 때네 그냥 가서 자방이고 뛰어온 거로 나 세야 될 때는 자방이는 다 코코로 참여하기다 그 웹사이트에 그 서버도 차디어레스 그러니까 소리엔 이거 웹 베네데 웹도 스파더 웹도 코로빅 그 네트 그 소리에 대차디어레스 그들은 탑 차도로 네트나
So first of all, very important point is that so for instance yesterday during the empowerment, when we receive the mind empowerment, for instance, our own mind and the mind of the Buddhas is actually an indivisibility. So for instance, during this mind empowerment yesterday, then there is the kind of introduction to or recognition of the indivisible nature. So our own body, speech, and mind and the body, speech, and mind of Buddha Amitabha are seen as an indivisibility. But at the same time, we can't say, even though that is the case, that we are actually indivisible from the realized, awakened mind of all the Buddhas. We can't say that we're exactly the same because we have the presence of the temporary obscurations. So even though, those obscurations are not really real, they're not substantially existent or truly existent, that is temporarily, even though they're insubstantial, they obscure us from recognizing our true nature. And so it is only those temporary obscurations and nothing more that become the cause for us to continue to wander in cyclic existence and samsara, because it is because we experience samsara because of the presence of the obscurations. And so these obscurations are like veils that prevent us from seeing our true nature. And so the fundamental cause, of those obscurations is ignorance or unawareness. And so through that fundamental unawareness, then there arises the mind of self-grasping. And as long as there's self-grasping, there is no possibility for liberation. It is that kind of narrow mind, limited mind of self-grasping that causes or is the source of all obscuration and the source of all samsara. So unless that mind of self-grasping is released through overturning the fundamental ignorance, then there is a concept of a self, a limited self. And then it is that limited self, because of that concept of self, that then we have the attachment and aversion, and therefore all the phenomena of samsara. And so this creates like a web, the web of samsara causes and conditions, conditionality that then keeps us trapped, just like trapped in our own web of delusion, and therefore we wander in cyclic existence.
당아서 당지시에 다인데 당아서 당지지도 약하게sam으로 오다 나랑 양sam로 가야마다 나랑 가라 갈리스 나랑 택해 틀리게 참 말이스 택해 지고서 이는 짐바디도 나 세야긴 짐바디 요 말에 손에 따단다가 좀 공원들이 히랍닝부 동구요로와 히랍닝부 나올라더니 고직발이 맞아 오네지나 맞아 다든 짐바디가 많이 바지라 이마 손에 되네 rangi chop dewa ji yo mari thina nga chon zin de kro wa oda thi yin ta the thanda de jik thanda nga cho herab ning bore ko nga zimba de tena do go yo re kesi din zimba de ji hebi na rangi modo wa da tan zimba de rangi modo ha ko herab da the opposite of the ignorant wa thi de ta nyam de ne ko cho rang de so ko dang de hen ro da 당지마다 뭔가 차당 당지매와 합하나 되네 차당스 해놓고래서 어다디 공가서 직할세로 키도 마상을 개 냠내 진행이 내가 직들에서
So the mind of self-grasping sometimes is sort of understood. It's like it can kind of like this attitude of, oh, I shouldn't have self-grasping, can still actually be bound up in grasping. so that there's kind of this idea of like, oh, we shouldn't care about ourselves. We shouldn't need to take care of ourselves. We shouldn't have, like, and then there's kind of this opposite that is actually still bound and grasping that occurs. So it isn't that, we don't look after ourselves and care for ourselves and take care of our basic needs. But what constitutes self-grasping, it's more just the grasping, right? It's the fixation or the grasping, which sort of turns things into limited self-identification that is bound by concepts and grasping. And so just like when we recite the Heart Sutra, that actually there's this fundamental misunderstanding of which attributes as existence to things that don't actually exist the way that we think that they do. And so it is a distortion of reality that is what we are calling self-grasping. And so when the light of wisdom arises, this is like the direct opposite of that mistaken perception of grasping. That is what for instance, the lines in the Heart Sutra are referring to. So it is the wisdom of emptiness that is the direct antidote to ignorance, because it is the opposite of ignorance. And so once we recognize that there is the mistaken nature of grasping to selfhood or identity, and when we are able to overcome or kind of release that grasping, then automatically through understanding the lack of self-nature, then attachment and aversion naturally unravel as a result of realizing the truth of selflessness.
That thing, 단한가서 단으로 주로 그나라 당보 공수가 나지래 되는 거죠. 해요로 봐. Bardo, Pova, Melam, Ose, Timola Kariungu is Julusia Ingola. Julu the Hakovina, any time of the consumer deco, preparing the childhood. That Julu tela Carson Mazota, a Pemamboyori, Pena, Jumadago, Melam Dago. Menon che sunyadago chakchadago lasobada trejo da puandi khorange jengazoda ambo ake la tene yuna sonde ta phongyo yene yang thongdewati khoran tangazo hamagode jing yudoje thonga yana yutela chakpa yamena yutela dawaji yorba yinanga zosamno yawatana Pena Chachano, Tati, also Tondege, the Samala, Melon, Sunyada Brazam, Tiniji Hakovina, Danazotela, Chagi Yamare, Dangamarwa, or that Tenagi, a chick and the Nazo, Kurbandikan, Neonaya, Kurban de la Go, Taholu de Ayo, Carholu de Ayarsan, Kurban de la Yimaro, Hakovina, Korean, Jiboyorwa. Dan Kurban de la Rangi top de Vado, Yaboina, Yabo, Boina, Dumbo, or that Tindigina, Kurbanina, Kurwa Dungara, Sia Chandler, Kurwa Dungana, go Dungan Mai Bike, Takasaka, Ian some do the Karchadi or some, not so deep, Kurwa Rangi top de Va, top de Vasana, Ganeri, Dungeri, Kurwadi, Temper Madova, Rangi Madova, Hakoyana. 대화와 어다테 담보디 그 파운데이션으로 들어가 좀 줄루스야 되고 창고를 해서.
Công ta de test coma song de tena de G de to Bardo poa milam osal tene Julu la
Julu this
Adingana. Tene Julu yang te pena shiwe ne kaptam rawa yoga yojiroa.
저다 요리 뒤에는 단다 줄을 하거나 걸어거나 이 가리나랑 이 조금 놓으셨나? 되네 보면 그러와. 되네 게다 되게 마음을 related 말람도 오지 말고.
Yeah. So he mentioned, in the 6 yogas we have those 4 that are specifically connected with the death process, Bardo, Poa, Dream Yoga, and Clear Light, and then illusory body, which comes before those. So that is also preparing for the death process, but it's also really working with undoing the mind of self-grasping during this life, because what one is doing is training to recognize the illusory nature of all phenomena, the illusory nature of this life. And so the examples that are given is that all phenomena is like an illusion, it's like a dream, it's like a reflection in a mirror, it's like and so it's like an echo, an empty echo. And so in that way, when we train ourselves to recognize that in a very visceral way, that all of the 5 faculties, because of the functioning of the 5 faculties, and then we have the 5 objects of the senses, and then when we are under the influence of delusion, we take all the phenomena that appears to the faculties, to the senses, to be real phenomena. And so because there's that grasping to their existence, then we react either with attachment or craving. We want, this is good, I like this, or we don't want, this is bad, I don't want this, unpleasant, get away. And so there is this constant polarization that occurs between attachment and aversion, and it's all in reactivity to phenomena. The phenomena that we experience through the senses that appears to us, because we take it to be real. But when we really understand that it isn't real, that it's no more substantial than empty reflections in a mirror, then the reactivity lessens. There's not a need to have such a strong reaction of attachment and aversion. And so gradually we overcome the reactivity of attachment and aversion and see all of the phenomena of samsara to be dreamlike and illusory. And when we're able to abide within the dreamlike existence of recognizing the dreamlike nature of all phenomena or existence, then phenomena or samsara is pleasant. Actually, we can actually enjoy it without fixation, and so therefore, there's not any concept of good and bad. There's not, a need to try to get all the good and reject all the bad, because we know that it's just empty, illusory phenomena, that it's just like a dream. And so this is really the foundation of the practice of illusory body in the 6 yogas.
That's a Korean on the bed of Havina. Nyadu Chuna Dina, then okay, Pichiboyo, Jibodo, flexible.
So, sorry.
That Korean 이 뭐로 해나? 좀 Korean 어디나 되는 게 있어. 야나. 다가서 야나 된게 많이나 주되는 데고나 되네. 해그와. 또 되네 코르바를 댐반지 되면. 근데요나 다가서 무슨 거로 차로 그래서.
So to be able to really to recognize the illusory nature of samsara, then we become like a fish in water. Like a fish in water is so agile and flexible. They can just sort of like swim with no difficulty, and they're completely flexible and agile. And so when we understand the non-existent nature, the fundamental lack of true existence, with all of this phenomena of samsara, we become like a fish in water. But on the other hand, when there is we really think things are real, we take everything so seriously, and there's tightness and inflexibility, and therefore a lot of suffering. It's like a person in water.
Maybe temporarily somebody will go swimming, but still
we're not
not
fish.
last long. What that is that background or chadi or is
So this is just kind of to give you like an opening talk or a background, to this topic. So if you would like, if you have some questions, he's happy to answer, and if not, we can just keep going with the starting with the prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to understand truly what illusory nature of all phenomena is, what is reality? What would be experienced if one lived in reality? I mean, is even listening to Dharma as we are now, is this all illusion too?
So for the people, can the people on Zoom hear the questions?
No, I should probably repeat it just to make sure.
Okay, so Anne is asking, she said, trying to understand what it truly means to recognize the illusory nature of all phenomena, and if it is the case that all phenomena is illusory, then what is reality? And is even like what we're doing right now, listening to Dharma teachings, is this all just an illusion?
That is the phenomena. Kurwadi, Tineta, Rangi Chomendo, Samba, Jumata, Malamdari, Sana. That understanding itself. The reality is.
So the reality is understanding the illusory nature of all phenomena. So that is the reality, is that it is all dreamlike and illusory.
The true true right true say do true Rangi Tom was another Maturova and a regular.
The Kora Rangshin Drup Sama Tulsara, Tani?
True the orders, Marek Baris.
Tani Karilavia?
Tene, that Kora the Rangi Tom, that didn't want you mother Riha, Malanda Riha, some kilo, Tanazo, Tadik, Kuri Jali Tatsarwa. Then you hear the pay hill of door.
So it is always, just as is said, it is a matter of delusion or the lack of delusion, or awareness and unawareness, samsara, nirvana, or nirvana, samsara, because it was, so if we, the moment that when we have belief in the true existence of things, then there is delusion. Delusion is present when we think...
Or delusion, or samsara, or...
When we think things are real, then this indicates the presence of delusion. And when, then ignorance is present. And the moment we start to have the sense, like, this isn't real. This is dreamlike. This is illusory. There's some aspect of the light of wisdom that is shining through. And so when we really fully recognize that, when we see it directly, then there is wisdom. Then there's the presence of wisdom, and we know what reality is when that becomes our experience. There's the absence of delusion.
Then that and the more teaching larva. In that the race, Penangatotella, Ton Tambe Mola, Natoti, Chicarsegore, Rayike, Tijatan, Tijitan, Chinkiatan, Tizat Yomaris. In a Nato Kunjo Mangola, Tanato Tribu Yore, Natola as long as Natola and Zimba Yuna. Timayunchi, Natola Chunya Nature, Sanji Yomara. Okay, Telepando Yoris. In and Nato young, high level level, Tadako Tinga Yomari, Tijaya Yomari, Tijaya.
So from, and then with your question about like teaching, Dharma teaching, is this all illusory? Yes, it is. It's all illusory. So for instance, from the perspective of the ultimate truth, none of it exists. There's not, someone who is receiving the Dharma, a person who's giving the Dharma, sitting on the throne, and the act of, and the Dharma teachings themselves. But when we have grasping, when there is the presence of delusion, then we have this division, right, of the relative truth and the ultimate truth, as long as there is the perspective of the relative truth, as long as there is the grasping of delusion. And so then we have to, because of that, then we want to make sure that all of our deluded experience is in the context of virtue. So as much Dharma teaching as we can get, we have to listen to the Dharma teachings, for instance. We have to, the one who's giving the Dharma teachings has to continue to give the Dharma teachings. There has to be this sort of constant effort at building virtue and merit from the side of the perspective of the relative truth, from the side of the relative. But from from the perspective of the ultimate, then yes, it is all dreamlike and illusory. And yet there is benefit.
So to follow up on this discussion right here, so if one were to sit in the ultimate, if one had achieved the ultimate, would one be experiencing the same thing but just understand that it's illusory and be the floor, be the teacher, be the listener, be all, or would one not be experiencing?
So let's, for the people on Zoom, can I just repeat for the people on Zoom? So then Patty's question was, well, then if someone were to sit in the ultimate, in the realization of the ultimate, or if one had had achieved the realization of the ultimate, then would this phenomena even occur for that individual? Yeah. Like, would we still be experiencing it, but in that experience recognizing the dreamlike illusory nature? And then you said something interesting, like, would we sort of not have
in the experience, would we be everywhere?
Would we be everywhere? Would we be in the floor? Would we be in the teacher who is speaking, and the students who are receiving the Dharma, in the Dharma teachings itself? Sort of, would we not be holding on to a sense of an individual identity? I think
That is Sanji na labuyo sarwa. Ina dati Sanji ksumduwa. Sanji barawa. Ina Sanji barita sama tongu yore senjen dungi do sama. Take more question.
Dici yu marawa. Matso garsi de don dangi demba to bayena. Then ngato tadung pena digi de netso yang then de pena korwa ginangwa nangere or dupa kunzo ginangwa nangerebe yang nangwe kabla pena ngato dagzin mena then ngato gi nyamyong la pena ngato Sangma ngazo ki yang tenang ngazo sala yang negio pa di lama rang la negio pa deni chu rang la negio pa deni kongso yang rang la pena guide sa nga da yemba masane nga sangma yemba dawo sorge de be.
Odati inditeri sanjena sanji aletati pejeta na tawati sarwa. Re dati karsana tana ngazo mato bengola tanda terawa ngazo chuti gogore ha gogore yinayang dati sama ngazo tomina tomorrow jik labdo ti gabla kene
Jare roche?
tomorrow jik tomina tene tele tanda ngazo mayi ngazo kansa tiyo maris beyond pena ngazo jik tiki gore dela negi gore korbenal negi gore tiyo maris karsana ko tambo kon korante te labdo dewa chembos
Dewa
제제티 나 프로로와 뭐도비게 코란당즈미나 대화 전부 프로로스 이노코티 용가 말로 배는 가서 비나를 요리더니 배나 다 대화진 그mollam 나한테는 가서 지 동아다야 요 말이스라고 하지 동아세야 메요 말이스
So dini iya so yini yang nangwa da dung nangre tampo
왜냐 상제로 오이나 semnya 동아리 오바 통그레스 이는 가서 individual 요 말이스 어서 대화 전공을 토로로 하티는 가서 단단한 요 말이스 로아지
So for a Buddha, like a Buddha can still perceive the suffering of sentient beings. There is, so for instance, in this like example that you gave, for someone, who is fully awakened, then like appearance still appears, but there is the experience of one taste. So multiplicity becomes the experience of equal taste or one taste.
One taste karisana it is dewachimu.
And this experience of one taste is great bliss. So what that would be like really transcends, it's beyond our ordinary concept. So we can't, it's not exactly like you suggested, like, oh, would our sense of self be like, spread out between all these different objects? So it's not like that because it transcends dualistic concept. So it is beyond what we can actually conceive of. But the experience is that of great bliss, because when there is no longer self-grasping, then there is, the experience of that is great bliss. There it is completely transcends suffering. There is no longer any level of suffering or tension, the tension, of embodied existence there. And so it's just like, for instance, in the aspiration prayer of Sukhavati, it says there is not even the name or the word of suffering. So there's like no possibility of suffering.
So, still, I'm so bothered by the suffering of other beings. I mean, it's an illusion and a delusion, but still, there are people who suffer. There are animals that are starving. Oh, what do you do with that?
So the next question was, she said, I'm so bothered by the suffering of other beings, even if it is illusory. So yes, maybe it is illusory, and it is delusion due to delusion. But there's so much suffering, people, animals, and what to do about that.
Really, that I think a very important part. Kariosna, machoji.
So it is, yes, that is true. And it is really important to have kind of a division in our mind between like there's ultimate truth and relative truth.
다 나중 our goal와 individually 가레이스나 나중 당지 해고야 돼. 테레스.
So our goal individually is to overcome self-grasping, the mind of self-grasping.
이내야 다 가서는 related level 요레스 동의 요레 강의 요레 텔라 가서는 가서디 다 이루스 쇼리라면 되게 말이스.
And if we then dismiss the relative level, though, with kind of these ideas or concepts of the ultimate level, ultimate truth, that doesn't work, because on the relative level there's difficulty, there's hardship. We can't dismiss it.
Then that and that someone also relatively bondino yudi. Then that himbal as much as possible himbal ningi jaya ropa cheya chegures. Ineya tangi ngato morning tangi lava na yiri. Yang telepe ngato sem ke tengla pada dunia ro di chigina ti peng maris. Roba ako nature ba. Ineya karsena ngato mona tele ningi jiga bugres. Ropa chi bugres.
So on the relative level, especially when it comes to witnessing the hardship and suffering of others, we want to develop ever greater compassion. We want to do what we can to help and benefit others. But together with that, when our witnessing suffering causes suffering for ourselves, then that isn't productive. So we want to have compassion, we want to help, but we also
Courage.
don't need to suffer, because of what, our witnessing the suffering of others. There's no benefit, it's natural. It's just what occurs on the relative level. But we want to cultivate compassion, and we want to do what we can to benefit.
Tiga naji kita ngaso kunzop teletene, wa kunzop ke kanye tang, dongye tang, tezol ya tene, tene tong tamba togo le simo tang, tong tamba jigo le ngaso kaya ma jigo jigo ya jump, awo ta kaya na yitobi o mari lana, ngaso tok togu mari individually tene, o karsa go stage, progress, do wa.
So, in fact, it is because of the relative truth that there's the potential to realize the ultimate truth. So it's through precisely that, developing compassion and working to benefit beings, that through the mode of the relative truth, that then one develops the merit and the virtue to be able to realize the relative truth. So we can't jump. We can't jump and just kind of like bypass and go directly to the ultimate truth. We have to create the conditions that allow us to realize the ultimate truth by way of the relative truth.
Ta tena cha wina tana terita, ngaso kato go le la wina ta shindo be ne kap la yang, tene ji kurwan de rang yi ma do wa tang theba le den tu yo na re, rang te le den tu tindi ji sam bi na, tene ta ngaso individual thon go re, sina kurbe sim che sam tu go yo ma wa. Ine yang individual tene thon go yo re, kurwa tha go yo re.
So, but what we do want to do is prepare ourselves to realize, to achieve liberation, for instance, at the time of death, to realize the true nature of samsara by understanding its lack of inherent nature, through, for instance, faith and creating the favorable conditions, karmic conditions, then there's the potential for oneself individually to become liberated, but that doesn't mean that all sentient beings become liberated. So there's still the experience of suffering for countless beings in samsara.
Yes.
How should we see this sadhana from Natso Rangro and the teachings from this weekend? Like, how do they differ from the Bardo total teachings and empowerment? And does it complement them somehow, or are they alike? That was the question.
So the next question was, so with these Bardo teachings, which are based on this Bardo prayer by Natso Rangro, how do these instructions differ from the Bardo Todro? Is it the same? Are they the same? Do they differ in some way, right? And was there some other aspect to that question? Do they complement one another?
What kind of compliments?
Pena dinda de drawo pena yang karsi di lo na dini Bardo Todro koa la ropa chegrebe dini Bardo Todro ha kona de la yang koa ropa chegrebe.
Tati dele karsena na so ngolam de stick pare koran tin dele yores. Yine yang ko ta yang Bardo Todro ina specific yores. Te kare la na Bardo Todro la du ta na so khaza che la ma da be jigla tene hiala ropa yores.
So yes, they definitely complement one another, and they follow the same kind of idea of what happens in the Bardo, but the Bardo Todro is much more extensive, and there's much more specific instruction. So, like for instance, when somebody, what the Bardo Todro really is designed for is for like somebody who is at the bedside of a person who is dying, like a lama, or after they have died, also, through whatever stages of the Bardo, for that lama or individual who's helping someone who is deceased to like recognize like specifics and to kind of guide them through the experience of the Bardo.
Bardo temlemne chiji tene ko nima rare experience dunta rare experience mandawa yores atene ta tene karsadi choni khwardo thang tene sabab khwardo thang jene khwardo tene te lamati ko ta transitional experience the yongre sentene 49 days yores te ko motu chair.
So, for instance, all the way from the death process, the breakdown of the physical body, the stages of dissolution, into the Bardo of death, then into the Bardo, the Chuni Bardo, the Bardo of Dharmata. It goes actually like day by day, week by week, through the process of like 49 days, through the Bardo of becoming, all the way to the Bardo of birth. There is this guidance that is occurring through the recitation of the Bardo Todro for someone who is helping or assisting somebody who has died, for generally like the time period of 49 days after death, or from the death process on.
That deep Bardo prayer the zo chejo the time so practice la tinana tene someone do they were cheap not familiar that daily practice lo chading those.
And this is a Bardo aspiration prayer, so it is for people while we're living to kind of familiarize ourselves with kind of preparing for the death process, and to practice daily. It can be recited, for instance, daily, this Bardo aspiration prayer. So it's really actually kind of more falls into the category of practice or preparation.
So, last night you referred to some really strong practitioners kind of being eager to approach at the time of death, being eager to make that transition. And so sort of like your uncle who's like, I'm all good, I just want to be propped up in the meditation position, which made me think of Tukdam, So it sounds like he kind of may have entered a state of tukdam because he wanted to be in a meditative position, and when someone dies in tukdam, they remain in that meditative position. What is going on when that happens? Why? And not all really good practitioners choose to do tukdam. So why is it that some die that way and some don't, and why? What's going on in that particular state?
So Brennan's question was that last night Drupon Rinpoche referred to strong practitioners being eager to die, and then he talked about the example of his uncle who was really said what he really wanted was to be propped up so that he could sit in the meditation posture. And then this made Brennan think of the practice of tukdam, where people, die in the meditation position and remain that way for a long while after they have died. But that as he understands it, not everyone, that it's kind of a choice, that even strong practitioners sometimes don't choose to die in tukdam. And, why is that? And what is happening when somebody does die in tukdam? Like, what is it that's actually going on to create that condition?
디 tukdam 댕게제이나 다 고라라왕 토바로지리 스타티.
So somebody who can die in tukdam has total control or freedom, independence. Yeah.
이네 양고 라왕 토바 참말라 tukdam 댕게리스나 댕게요서 말이스 고란소 초이스와.
But even just having that control or that independence doesn't mean that someone necessarily does die in tukdam. That is a choice.
배는 가서 근데 요래 생각이 다 라마 톱네 고라베 머신고네 되네 고지. 배는 속도지. 단도 이벤트 breathing 저기 요나 되네 가히 고지.
So there's some, for instance, who have that level of control or independence and practice who may decide to check out even before they stop breathing. So they'll actually, leave the body and depart to the pure realms. They might be sort of taken off by the dakinis. Like the example, in, for instance, Milarepa's life story.
제가 나이다 나서 단다디 나로 주로 그 나라다 단다디 나서 양야도 참말라 다 나로 주로 야고 장댕이요나 인체민이 쉬고야 요 말에스 그 마신고네 근데 주고 포와지도 그 대가랑 고랑고랑 제반될 거지 옥체와 대가랑 토로야 손으로 있는 독담세야 그 no related in the body로 와.
Yeah, so for instance, someone also who's a practitioner of the six yogas of Naropa, then they wouldn't, for instance, need to do tukdam because they, are training through the 6 yoga poa practices, for instance, to achieve dharmakaya poa, even right as the breath comes to a halt. So there's the dharmakaya poa is achieved right then and there, and one doesn't even go through necessarily the
body dissolution,
the stages of more subtle level dissolution, or any of the progressive stages of the bardo. So it this liberation can kind of be achieved at different times, and that also is connected with whether there's tukdam or not.
It's kind of a big question, I know.
It is, yeah.
That's good. Very good. Okay.
Another question in the nature of illusion and reality. What is the reality of overcoming self-grasping? What is grasping? What's the other side of self-grasping? And how would that influence one's life?
So the question now is another question about illusion and reality. What is the other side of self-grasping? So what does it look like to overcome self-grasping, and how would that affect one's life? Kana tini di dagzin shek na tini nyamyong gare de te gande do tini pena garsi mi chek dagzin meba dawo cha paina tini khomso mi te gande la gande yong gare.
Tene hemakare.
Techibo.
Ta re dangzi she zidi ta therwa. Tani kontuwari ta nga zo de korwari tharwa. Yina yang as long as nga zo body de yu we kabla ko tat ko koram pe de karsa training point kharcha na nga hibe ne ka mato be ke thanda lu de yu be jumsen de le teni ko ya jik pe na sem sanje yimbi na ya ko lu de la ko jwa he tho de jumsen de le teni lu na ya thang gangi yu atli yong yu sarwa teni thanda lu de la ne koram jik pe na karsa mo ka dang ji he de be dang ji he yo na kanyen de yo mari yinbi yina yang ko luin de le den de kabla ne yang ko ji na wa na wo dang so tong yo wa
So
lu le kan yo wa
so like as long as, even if someone achieves liberation from samsara while they're embodied as a human being, as long as there is the body, then there is some degree of karmic ripening, of at least physical suffering. So the body is still subject to birth, old age, sickness, and death. But the mind might be completely liberated. And so if the mind is completely liberated, there's no suffering. There's no added mental suffering to the physical experience of suffering. So, but for most often the full complete liberation occurs only with the death process usually, because but even if there is someone who has completely overcome self-grasping while they're alive, they still would exhibit the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Right.
yina yang ta therwa kana nga so ang ki karsinada ji nagi yore yimbi yina yang karsina kale ji slowly la tene nga so lu de le ma ko wan charo yo sarwa dang di hena.
But it would be that, for instance, if they gradually, like the dependence on the body would become less and less. So there might be illness, but one is really not affected, by that kind of display of illness, for instance, in the body. Right?
That is one, I think, story is, not story, but our Sangha member, he's old. I think he's 96, right? I think he's 96.
Yogi?
Yogi.
Yeah, maybe 96.
Yeah, so he's practitioner. So one day, so he put like his dining table, he put a kind of plate, a lot of, hands up, but I think many different.
Somebody who was looking after him every day would arrange different foods for him, right?
Right, but not one day he did himself.
Oh, one day he did it himself.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, I think that day or next day, I want to see him, so say, oh, I'm going to upstairs, So otherwise, he's not much questioning, you know. So
Was there an upstairs
No.
to go to? Oh, okay.
yeah, I think he's going to pure it. Like it means he's
Right.
just going upstairs. And then afternoon, so then he said he can take care of one guy. He said, oh, he can't do what you call hallucination or something.
He was, so that his caretaker told Drupon Rinpoche that he had been, hallucinating or saying all these things that were indicating that he was hallucinating.
Right. And then he took the hospital.
So he took him to the hospital.
And then, so in hospital, he's actually this veterans, right?
Like he was a veteran, so he was in the veterans hospital.
But he don't want, his life. He says, no medicine, no hospital. So actually, he's the World War II, I think.
He was a World War II veteran.
Interesting. So it's a long story, I think. American veterans, German veterans. I don't know. He's originally from the Ukraine, but anyway. So then, I think maybe he's just like up a worry, maybe long time in hospital and those things. So then he's working, so we can go afternoon. But next day it's 9 o'clock. He just passed away. So that's not really. He prepared and he's no suffering and nothing.
You went upstairs.
He go upstairs. Actually, like yes, So this, he's leaving. I'm now going to upstairs. So yeah, that's his karma. He did long time practice. I think he's Khenpo Gardar and Karma.
He was a student of Khenpo Gardar. Actually, he did 12 years of retreat, I think.
And then, he did retreat. Is very conditions very difficult. I think one cabin, there's no bathrooms, no heater, or even though he have to bring the water. He says sometimes snow is very high, so climb up the snow. Anyway, so he Florida maybe I think 10 years. I think so. Very nice. So. Okay, so I think order 12. So short dedication.
Okay, so we'll do the short dedication.
Which is page 38.
On page 38. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the ways of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. May the teachings of the great Drupon Rajashri, Lord of Nishishan, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara.
Thank you.